Language learning seems straightforward. Study hard, practice often, and you'll succeed. But research shows 78% of adult learners abandon their language goals within the first year. And I think I know why.
That's such a striking statistic. What patterns have you noticed behind this massive dropout rate?
Well, here's what's fascinating. It's rarely about intelligence or even dedication. Studies show that successful language learners spend about 20% less time studying than unsuccessful ones, but they approach it completely differently.
Hmm, that challenges everything we typically assume about language learning.
Let me break this down with some concrete data. Research from cognitive science shows that passive learning, just watching movies or reading, only accounts for about 10% of actual language acquisition. Yet most students spend 80% of their time on exactly these passive activities.
That reminds me of the vocabulary statistics. Students who memorize isolated words retain only 15% after 6 months.
Exactly right. And here's why that matters. The human brain processes contextual learning 5 times more effectively. When vocabulary is learned in phrases and real-world situations, retention jumps to 65% after 6 months.
So, how do we help students make this fundamental shift in approach?
Let me pose a question to think about. What's the difference between knowing a language and being able to use it? Take a moment to consider that.
That's such an important distinction. It's like the difference between knowing the rules of basketball and being able to play the game.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Neuroscience shows that active language production activates 60% more neural pathways than passive consumption. When students speak or write, they're literally building stronger neural networks.
You know what's fascinating about that? It aligns perfectly with the critical period hypothesis being challenged recently.
Oh man, let me tell you about the latest research on that. Studies of adult learners show that while children might have advantages in pronunciation, adults actually acquire grammar patterns 30% faster when using active learning strategies.
That must be incredibly encouraging for adult learners who think they've missed their window.
Here's another question to consider. What 3 activities would you prioritize if you had only 30 minutes a day to learn a language? Think about that for a moment.
That really forces us to think about efficiency versus time spent.
Well, the data is clear on this. The most successful learners spend 40% of their time speaking, 30% on focused listening, and 30% on interactive writing. Notice how passive activities aren't even in that top 3.
Those percentages really challenge the traditional classroom model, don't they?
And here's why that matters. Traditional classrooms typically spend 70% of time on grammar and vocabulary instruction. But studies show this only accounts for 20% of actual language acquisition in successful learners.
That disconnect between teaching methods and learning outcomes is pretty striking.
Let me share something even more surprising. Research shows that learners who regularly engage in self-talk in their target language progress 40% faster than those who only practice with others.
And that's such a powerful tool for students who say they don't have practice partners.
And here's the kicker. Brain imaging studies show that internal dialogue in a second language activates the same regions as native language use. It's literally rewiring your brain for fluency.
These insights really transform how we should approach language learning, don't they?
Well, let me wrap this up with some actionable takeaways. The research shows 3 key factors for success: daily active production, even just 20 minutes, contextual learning rather than isolated study, and embracing imperfection. Studies show students who allow themselves to make mistakes progress 60% faster than perfectionists.
That's such a powerful framework for rethinking language acquisition. And
And remember, it's not about how much time you spend, but how you spend that time. The most successful learners aren't necessarily the ones studying the longest, but the ones studying the smartest.